No, I've just gone share and it
Yeah.
won't allow me to optimize the video.
Uh-oh. Well, we saw it, so maybe just play it anyway.
All right, let's see.
Hello, I'm Paul Kirby, and we're here outside this really busy street with an electric bus going past. We're here to
Jazz
introduce.
hands. Can you hear it?
No, we're pretending.
Darn.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm
Oh
just gonna have to
no.
I'm just gonna have to go straight in and I tested that this morning and everything.
That's tech.
Poop! Right, okay, let's crack on. Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our March webinar all about bi-directional charging. It did give me great pleasure and still does to welcome a new partner to our cafe, and that is Avalo. They have joined the AA and Europe Car and a host of other partners, all contributing to speeding up the transition to zero emission transport. And I'm stepping in to the host's chair today because, well, frankly, Johnny needs a V to JB charge. But it's
Oh.
exciting times at the moment. And we've reached a point in the energy transition where we can no longer afford to look at the electric vehicle as just a box on four wheels that takes power from a plug. We're here to discuss the energy handshake in its most literal form, bi-directional charging. V to G, V to X, V to L, V to anything, frankly. And behind the alphabet soup of acronyms lies a structural reality that most of the industry is still treating as a future project. But while the bureaucracy is stuck in the ice age, some are already living in the future. And Sam is one exponent of bi-directional charging. Samuel, my dear chap, I have seen you doing this stuff. Talk to us about your experience in this space.
Well, thank you, John, and good morning or good afternoon, I should say, to everybody involved. And hello to Sarah as well, the wonderful Sarah Sloan, too. But yeah, no, vehicle to grid. I've been really excited about this webinar. It's something that is close to my heart, actually. There's lots of different technologies out there. There's no silver bullet. We recognize that. I was at a conference yesterday talking about EHGV, and vehicle to grid came up there frequently, as much as it is in the car world. So I think it's very much an element of the technology and energy supply chain that is going to be, in my humble opinion, integral into what we do. And as part of this presentation, I wanted just to share just three examples, actually. And you know me, I like real world examples of stuff I've done, and then I talk about it. And with that in mind, that's what I just wanted to share with you, just to give everybody a bit of a perspective of how this all works. I am not the expert, but I have been and there and done a few bits and pieces related to it. So, John, please do tell me if that is working and you can see everything.
Beautiful. Rather
Thank you.
like myself.
Well, indeed. I started with vehicle to anything because you just said that, so I just chucked in the title at the very last minute. But what vehicle to something, vehicle to X, is very much the principle of using the battery and technology within your vehicle, not just to drive it forward and use it as a traditional propulsion energy source, but also that to put the energy back into something else. So vehicle to X is the overarching phraseology, which is designed there to cover a number of different types of technology and data and energy distribution out of the vehicle as opposed to in it. So that's my illustration of that. And as it says there, it's a communication and energy transfer technology that connects electric vehicles to external systems, including power grid infrastructure, other vehicles and devices. So that's the principle of what this is all about. But to get into some real world examples, one of which, and I know Jamie will mention this next or later as a Horizon additionality, but vehicle to load is one of the ways that in which vehicles are able to utilize the energy to plug something in, whether that be a light, a computer, a fridge, or anything, by virtue of having what effectively a three-pin UK socket somewhere in the vehicle, whether that be at the back of the unit in a van or a plug socket in the car. And actually, my real world example of that was the rally a couple of years ago. So I was very fortunate enough to travel the whole rally on an electric motorbike a couple of years ago. And that was a pretty challenging thing to do because for various reasons, but one of the charging reasons was it charges reasonably slowly. So I had to plot my route quite meticulously throughout every day to get around and meet all the checkpoints. But the rally could not have happened, and this was Lorna McAteer's idea, so credit to her. could not have happened for me if I wasn't vehicle to loading my motorbike every night. So this image, albeit not particularly pretty one, is one of the, I think that's the EV6, is it? I think, um, parked outside the hotel on day one, and I was charging my motorbike off that car. So I got back every single day with an empty tank on my motorbike, and then used the vehicle to charge me back up again. So I started the day on 100%. It lost about 14% of its state of charge. So as a very large battery as it is, didn't really make any difference to the support car. For me, it was everything. It was the difference between being able to do the rally on a motorbike or not, on the basis this was a reasonably low power charging piece of kit. So that's vehicle to load, really. And there are a number of vehicles now that are coming through. I've just put a list there of some of them: the Hyundais, the Kias, the BYDs, Ford in the US, MG, etc., that have all got this capability coming through. Verizon, of course, with their van coming through with this technology. So this is coming, and this is one of the first stages of being able to use the energy in your vehicle for something else. The bigger game in town, perhaps arguably though, is vehicle to grid. So same principle, but the energy is going from your vehicle, and you're actually using a vehicle to grid unit, a charger, to export that energy back into the grid, and that's quite exciting, because not only can that support the local grid networks, but also that means an opportunity for you to use your assets as revenue generating tools. And I have my own, again, real world example of this back in 2020. I had to look back into the archives of my depths of my iPhotos to find these couple of images, and discovered, to my horror, that this was 6 years ago. But I did have, I can't remember how many units now, I'm looking at it, I think it's about 10 or so vehicle to grid units parked at my old logistics company that I used to own. And those vehicles were powering the building every night. So even though they say vehicle to grid on the outside, they weren't actually exporting energy to the grid at this particular configuration, but it was powering the logistics center of mine through the night. So those vehicles, the excess energy that they had at the end of each shift, was powering the building for throughout the duration of the sortation, and then at some point in the morning, it then switched back onto energy coming into the vehicles to charge them back up, ready to go out the next day. So any excess energy in the vehicles was being used to power the building, therefore not consuming energy at peak times off the grid when they all came back at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. So that's the sort of commercial application. And then this one is really fun, because it's something I've only just begun doing. But again, same principle, this is really vehicle to grid. So I've recently procured myself a Nissan Leaf, which has vehicle to grid technology in it. And thank you to Indra for supplying me with a charger at no cost. I was able to pick up a Nissan Leaf from Cleveland Motors for £1,500, 40 kilowatt hours of battery. Most people have about 10 kilowatt hours in their house if they buy a battery storage independently. So that's 4 times the cost, 4 times the size, capacity of a normal traditional battery storage at someone's house. But I paid a fraction of the price for that benefit. A typical home battery, as I said here, is about 5 to 13 kilowatts. I use about 5 to 10 kilowatt hours a day, and the excess is going to be pumped into the grid. If you wanted 40 kilowatt hours of energy at your house today, it's going to cost you somewhere between 15 to 20,000 pounds to do it, or in that range. So this is quite a sneaky way, using, to a certain extent, a bit of obsolete technology. In the Nissan Leaf, the Indra charger is a trial charger, so you can't buy it. It's something that's been kindly given to me for this purpose. But the principle of what's coming down in the future very much reflects this same type of technology. A massive caveat, which I wanted to state here, is you can't try this at home, because you'd have to buy a Leaf, you'd have to get an Indra charger from somewhere, and therefore my little setup is not something that I'm suggesting everyone can go out and do, because you can't. But the infrastructure is being evolved now to be into the AC configurations of the modern vehicles, such that there are now a number of different vehicles like the BYD Dolphin, the Renault 5, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, etc., that will enable people to not have a second car like I've done, but use their existing car, the one they use to drive around the place, that can also power their house when they get home at night, and do so through new vehicle to grid and vehicle to load enabled chargers. So whilst my setup is a bit unique, it still remains to be the future. It's just that technology for that is coming through. And my last slide really is just to show a little bit of graphical representation of what that looks like in the real world. So this is a timestamp of a week's worth ish of my consumption at home using my vehicle to grid charger. So the yellow line that runs along the top is the state of charge of my Nissan Leaf. So it runs along the top at 100%, and then where you can see the little line drop down a bit and then go back up again, that's a day's worth of consumption as my house slowly draws upon the car's energy during the day, and then pumps itself back up again to 100% during off-peak time. So where the green is the green. There isn't any green. The orange is the power that my house is using. And so you can see where there's big spikes there, where something is happening, like I've plugged something in, or there's a heater on, etc. And then the blue is the power that's being distributed through the charger. So you can see sometimes the blue that spikes upwards is because it's matching something that I'm using. Maybe I plugged a vehicle in, a motorbike or my Tesla or something. And then wherever you see the blue blips down, that is where the car is taking the slack. So whenever I've put the kettle on, or there's a heater running, or the washing machine's going, or anything like that that's using a burst of energy during peak times, the car's kicking in and going, I've got that covered, I've got that sorted for you. Such that, and if you just have a quick look on the bottom left there, whilst I pay 28 pence a day, 28 pence per kilowatt hour, sorry, during the day for my energy, and 8 pence at night, because my car is being refilled with 8 pence a kilowatt off peak every night, I'm using that energy during the day. So I only ever pay 8 pence a kilowatt hour, because I never touch the peak, because the car is taking the slack during the peak time, which is a really nice story. And this is something that is demonstrating that you can have much, much cheaper electricity, and you can push the energy demand and make sure that you're using energy off the vehicle or your battery storage instead of off the grid during peak times, which helps the national grid. It helps everybody to be able to flatten that peak curve during the day. So yeah, John, I think that's the end of my merry dance here. But I just wanted to show a few examples because hopefully it was interesting.
It certainly
Sam,
was.
he's good, isn't he?
It's actually
Sarah,
it's so nice because Sam, you have had, thank you for doing that presentation and for providing us with that information. Great comments as always in the chat there. What I absolutely love about it though, for you as someone in the industry, is yet again, you're pioneering something new, and it's a beautiful full circle situation for you, having tried it very famously in your Newt days. Now you're doing it at your home. And there's another piece of history I think is really important to frame here, that right back in 2018, 2019 was the big Kaluza OVO, everybody involved trial. And the sort of vision there of that was about to show how charging when it's cheapest, cleanest, cleanest at the end is where everybody wants to be. And these vehicle manufacturers that are coming forward that you highlighted in your presentation enables that for the masses, enables that for the fleets, enables that bi-directional communication to happen between the car and the house, and take away the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So you will not get to a flat car. You can set those parameters yourself as we evolve through the software that enables the hardware to function. So this is just a really good example of many, many use cases that are building towards a bigger picture. I suspect a future-proofed depot is exactly what we're going to learn about this afternoon.
Indeed, yeah, and thank you for all the comments, by the way. It's great to see them. There was one I think I just saw from, I think it was Nigel, said, I like the idea of a second-hand car. It keeps moving. There's too many comments. But he was basically saying, what happens if I've got emergency and I've drained my battery? Well, just to answer that one quickly, I've got 40 kilowatt hours. I only ever use 10 a day. And so, well, maximum of 10 really. So I've always got extra capacity in there that I then export, or will be exporting, to make money off that energy as well. But you can set the car to what you want it to be. So I've set it so that it goes down to its absolute minimum, which is 10%. The Nissan will not allow you to go lower than 10%. I could set that to 50% if I wanted to. So if it was my actual car or a second car that I wanted to use and I needed to nip out, you can cap that sort of stuff within the configuration so that you're protected from those sort of eventualities. So there is a little bit of thought gone into that as well.
That was the example I was just giving, Sam, that you can easily toggle within the car,
Yeah.
on the app, future models, make sure that you as a user, and this is a huge UK-wide study, and Bristol was part of the trials there, and we found the homeowners were really willing to do it once they felt they were in control and that they were not going to have the same scenario that you just described.
Sam, we've got 1 minute before we flip over to our first guest, and I just want to ask you a question in something about the future, where potentially grid serve hubs and CPO hubs aren't just giving power to cars, but might actually absorb energy back in from them to balance the motorway grid during peak demand. Can you see that happening?
No, I don't think so. And maybe the reason I'm hesitating is in the car world. No, I don't think so, because I think in those sort of environments, people want to get in, they want to get out, they want to consume as much energy as possible and go about their journey. They're not there to discharge energy for some other reason. So it's very much that those sort of scenarios are ones where people want to be in and out in 10, 15 minutes. And we're seeing the charging periods. People are consuming more energy with less time, right? That's the trajectory of both of those, which is great. It's what we want to happen. So I don't think that sort of en route charging is necessarily the perfect fit. And the reason why I hesitated though is because what I do know from my HGV experience is there's lots of tramping that goes on. There's lots of trucks that are sat while drivers are asleep for 12 hours a day, where they are and could be plugged into a site like that, and that is a 3, 4, 500 kilowatt hour battery potentially that could, even one of those plugged into a motorway service areas, could have a meaningful effect in the future because they're there for 12 hours and because it's a bloody big battery. That might be a use case in that scenario that it might work more effectively, I think. But there is an element of sort of dwell time that needs to be considered here in regards to vehicle to grid. So the longer you dwell somewhere, not only is that better for lower, you can charge your vehicle for a longer period of time and therefore consume less energy per hour. It also means that you can distribute energy more effectively over a longer period as well. So I think that's why it was a sort of yes, no answer, John. I think it's a bit horses for courses, isn't it?
Absolutely, always is. Now then, are you playing bi-directional bingo? This is the question. Now, let me see if I can make the technology work. Yes, indeedy. Right, those are the keywords that we are looking for today in bi-directional bingo. And if you get all of them, all 15, as soon as you do, you can scan that QR code. I've put the document in the chat so you can see it, or you can send us an email at hello@evcafe.org. The first person who has legitimately heard all 15, and we will check, will win an EV Cafe mug. So exciting times, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, I am due to play another video. Let me just see. Oh, I know. This could be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster. Yeah, it's not going to play. So let's not do that. Let's move on. Sam, let's have our first guest.
Me again, isn't it? Right. The first guest is is the first guest Jamie? I know.
Let's go with Jamie. Let's go with
It
Jamie.
is now.
All right.
Yeah.
Jamie, it is. Yes. All right. Hang on, Jamie. I've got to find your. Oh God. You think I've been
6
prepared.
years. 6 years, and we're still as good as we were on day one.
Yeah, and for some reason my camera has just decided to give a cog symbol, which is amazing, isn't it?
It's good though because we can't see you.
Well, you can't see me, but you can hear me, so I'm just going to carry on. Jamie, I'm so sorry, but bear with me. I've got so many screens. Right, Jamie Fretwell, PR and Communications Manager at Jamil Motors UK, or perhaps more well known for us as Verizon Auto UK. Jamie heads up communication events for Jamil Motors UK, and where he tries to put his decades of storytelling experience to use in promoting Verizon's range of all-electric vans. Storytelling. I'm not sure about storytelling. You are a doer, not telling stories. You're telling the stuff that you've done. But anyway, Jamie started his career as a motoring journalist at a weekly car magazine, spending 5 years driving everything from vans to the world's smallest EV, the PLP 50. Now, I looked up the PLP 50, and I want to see a picture of Jamie in one of those because I'm not sure that round peg fits through that square hole. But anyway, after that, he moved into a corporate communications role at the Beaver LA before heading to work for manufacturers with stints at Mercedes-Benz trucks and Volkswagen commercial vehicles. Fun fact, whilst being well known for the EV Cafe community, for being ridiculously tall, Jamie cannot actually touch the moon. He can, however, haul himself over tall fences and every year does just that in the Tough Mudder events, which he participates in to raise money for charity. So, Jamie, welcome. As always, you are an absolute joy of a man and have always been very supportive of us and indeed myself over the years. So it's a delight to have you on the show and very welcome to you.
Thanks very much for having me, Sam. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone on the EV Cafe. As Sam says, I work for Jamil Motors, other side. We're the official distributor of the Verizon electric van range in the UK. So we launched last year, big bang at the CV show with the all-electric SV large van. It's available in 3 different lengths, 3 different heights, and 3 different battery sizes as a panel van. So really good option out there for operators who are looking to decarbonise. Verizon is the commercial vehicle division from Geely. So a lot of people know Geely's passenger cars like Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, and now we have Geely Auto as well. So Verizon commercial vehicles in China, the world's largest seller of global new energy vehicles. But as the purpose of being here today is because we're quite unique in that we offer not just one vehicle to load socket in the back of the van, but as Sam alluded to earlier, 3 3.3 kilowatt sockets as standard. So You might have seen us at the CV show or at Fleet Mobility Live, where we have a coffee barista being on hand to serve everyone, keep everyone caffeinated, and his kit, so the grinder that's grinding the coffee beans, the fridge that's keeping the milk cold, the kettle that is actually quite a high spike. It would probably come up on Sam's graph you were showing earlier of a spike when you switch a kettle on. All of that being powered off the batteries from the vehicle. So with the vehicles, I mentioned 3 different battery sizes. So 67 kilowatt, 83 kilowatt, or 106 kilowatt. So Sam, your earlier point, your typical house has a home battery of between 5 and 13 kilowatt hours of capacity. We can go up to 106 kilowatt hours of capacity, which can run the barista for all 3 days of the CV show or all 3 days of Fleet Mobility Live. So that's one side of vehicle to load that you can get in commercial vehicles. The other, as Sam's alluded to as well already, is the idea of powering not just the wheels to drive forward, but also powering something that's happening on the back of your commercial vehicle. So for small commercial vehicles and vans, it might be a refrigerated unit, and we've teamed up with Paneltex to showcase that refrigerated van that can cool down to -3 degrees. And likewise, there are other products in the pipeline coming. And again, the bit of experience in commercial vehicles, we know that it's not just about the van being the job, it's also what's on the back. So yeah, delighted to be on this panel and happy to answer any questions or have you guys pick my brains.
We'll be holding you to that at the CV show. We'll all be queuing up for coffees out of the back of the van. We don't have Paul Kirby with us today. The beloved Paul Kirby is on a much earned rest, and he is, of course, the van man, the very one, as we call him. What do you think you would say to him if he said, as a viewer looking to procure a van, what's so, apart from the 3 plugs, which you already mentioned, what is the number one thing that's very special about the Horizon? We've seen it on the rally, so that's a bit of a cheeky, fully loaded question, but what would you say to someone trying to procure a van?
I would say that it really depends on your operation in terms of the type of van you need. We know that vans are the backbone of the UK economy. They're out there with plumbers, builders, and tradespeople of all sizes, all shapes. It's very easy to go for what you've always had, and diesel has been the dominant force for the last 125 years. It's also very easy to then go to one of the established manufacturers who you've been buying your diesel vans from and just go for their electric version. But when you start from the ground up with an EV, that gives you so many more advantages. So like I said, these ideas of having 3 different battery options to increase payload, to increase the load capacity that you can fit in the back. We start from the ground up as an EV, not just because it makes us different, because it actually benefits you as an operator. We have built-in payload monitoring, so you can actually see on the dash in real time how close to the 3.5 ton weight limit you are. We have, again, a lot of the car-like features that you would expect. So not just heated seats, but they're also ventilated as well, which when you're spending 10 hours a day in your van, you don't want your back stuck to the sweaty seat after there. So having the aircon actually coming through the seats and keeping you ventilated is a really nice feature for it. And again, the design, we don't have a B pillar on the passenger side. That just makes the aperture nice and wide. So if you're going in and out, combined with a low floor, it's a really big aperture. So you're not either smashing your knuckles on the side of it, or you're able to get basically as much stuff as you need to fit in the van. And Paul would be the first person to say that if the wheels ain't turning, you ain't earning. And that's a crucial thing for commercial vehicle guys. They want to be out on the road earning money.
Well, on that, how quickly does the Horizon van onboard the power?
So we have, across the 3 batteries, our maximum charging speed at the moment is 140 kilowatt. So that is 20 to 80% in about 36 minutes. I have done it faster than that. I went down to an Ionity in Bristol a couple of weeks ago, and it being a 400 kilowatt charger, the speed was fantastic. But of course, you pay for that. But I come back to the idea of it being born electric and built from the ground up as an EV. You have so much better efficiency by not having a prop shaft running power down the back of the van and separating out. Having the motor spinning the same way as the wheels means we can get up to 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour out of our vans, which is not the 4 miles per kilowatt hour, 5 miles per kilowatt hour that some of the guys would be used to. But so Sam, is a man who holds a world record for driving electric vans very efficiently, knows the better that figure is. The average van is driven about 8,000 miles a year. And to go back to the energy prices and the efficiency, ultimately it saves you money. So if you're charging at home 26 pence per kilowatt hour, and then you're charging publicly, and I think the average rate according to the AA's recharge report is 45 pence per kilowatt hour, you could be, I don't know, charging at home 75% of the time, charging publicly the remaining 25% of the time, and you're spending less than £1,000 a year on electric. If you look at the current diesel prices at the moment, it's 162, and your average van gets maybe 25 miles per gallon if it's being driven sensibly. You're looking at spending £2,500 a year on diesel, so you're saving close to £1,500 a year on your fuel costs alone just by switching to a born electric, built from the ground up EV.
Jamie, are there any particular sectors that have said, yes, I need that in my life?
We've had a lot of success with the fleet industry. Some of the guys have been really interested, so trialing vehicles. The idea that you can charge your power tools in the back of the van while you're driving to site. Delivery companies, obviously, they are not necessarily carrying payload, but having the massive amount of volume that we get in the back in terms of cargo capacity. And then, yeah, it is your small tradespeople. So we've got a growing dealer network, which has now got 8 sites across the UK. And they're really targeting the retail buyers with our Big 4 retail offer, for example, that runs till the end of June this year. The idea that you get your 4 years warranty as standard, your 4 years free roadside assistance from the AA, but then we also add in 4,000 miles of free charging and 4 years of free servicing. That's been really appealing to those small to medium businesses. But to go back to vehicle to load, really it does depend on your operation. If you're a window cleaner, you might want to power your pressure washer, or if you're a plumber, like I said, you're wanting to be carrying 3-meter pipes, being able to cut through with an electric saw. So having vehicle to load on the back is really, really important for those guys, more so than others.
And you were with us on the EV rally, as Sarah mentioned earlier, and I know that the logistics teams who used the vehicles for the whole of the rally had no issues and actually didn't want to give them back. They're that good.
It's the range again, up to 250 miles, or 247 on the WLTP combined cycle is class leading. So again, I go back to that point about being born electric, built from the ground up as an EV. That's what gets you that advantage. And for us to put 3 plug sockets in the back of the van, no one else out there is doing that. For us to put the onboard payload monitoring in there, no one else is doing that. And as Sam's already shown, the possibilities are endless. You can charge up an electric motorbike off the 106 kilowatt hour battery in the back of the van using the 3 kilowatt plugs, or you can power a coffee machine.
It's also the
commercial
driver
vehicle.
comfort, though. We interviewed you and the drivers, and everyone said the same, is that this van goes beyond being a workhorse. It's actually somewhere that you are happy to spend the time in and able to really experience all those more small design features that you've done. It's fantastic. Can't wait to see you again.
Jamie, you've done a fantastic job. It is time now for the very, very tall Jamie Fretwell to go away and polish the moon. It's a bit dusty. We'll see you soon, my friend. Thank you for being here. Stick around. We'll come to Q&A right at the end, and we'll doubtless have more questions for you then.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, buddy. Right, Sam, it is our next guest, and it's Stephen Large from Hangar 19.
It is, and I think it's worked this time. Look, I deliberately made his image really large. It's childish, I know, but I did it anyway. All right, Steve, welcome. So Steve is the technical director at Hangar 19. In 2009, he developed PodPoint's home and public charge points, along with a platform that monitored everything. In 2011, he developed the National Charge Point Registry, the NCR, for the Department for Transport, the first national mapping system to locate charge points and propose a solution for roaming. For over a decade, Steve has been involved in smart charging and vehicle-to-X projects. Fun fact, in 2018, Steve was stopped in the street in Japan and interviewed for a TV show that he, to this day, doesn't know what it was for or about. Whether he made any sense, probably not. Along researching vehicle-to-grid, the trip reinforced the long-life love of karaoke, which he maintains in his best way to cement business relationships. And he's going to sing for us now. No, just kidding. Steve. Although he didn't flinch, so it makes me wonder whether
He's ready.
No, Steve, welcome to the show. I think is it your first time on with us?
I think it is. Yeah,
Probably wondering what the hell have I come into, but nevertheless, you're very, very welcome. Please do tell us about this vehicle to X journey of yours.
Oh yeah, thanks for the intro, Sam. So yeah, I feel like I've been working in EV charging forever, so since 2009, and I think I've got a decade on the clock in terms of vehicle to grid now. Because the first projects I got involved with were 2016 with what was Western Power Distribution, and exploring whether vehicle to grid was going to be real, and essentially that had all been triggered through a couple of visits from big company from Tokyo, TEPCO, and that had issues with, if you remember, the Fukushima plant going up, and they were looking at energy resilience in Japan. Thus, the Nissan Leaf, thus CHAdeMO, the protocol adopting bidirectional capability. So since then, I've been involved in 8 different vehicle to grid projects, and to be honest, most of that has been sort of in the depot. I don't get out of the depot that much. I'm always working with people who are kind of charging their fleets first, and then we've got more and more into workplace charging and public charging since. We run around about 5,000 chargers in the UK on our park and recharge sort of charge point operations. And I think coming back to today, what we're talking about is how do we turn those EV fleets from just being a cost into profit. And I think those people who know about charge point network operations for public charges, as a profit, everybody knows people get charged for recharging their vehicles, and there's money exchanging hands. So it's not just an all-out cost, there's money coming into it as well. So how do we do that for the fleets as well? And this comes back to the fact that cars and vans, they're no longer just transport, really, are they? A bit like on your drive, Sam, it's energy storage on wheels. And all the time that those vehicles are sitting there doing nothing, they're depreciating in value. If they can be bringing in some other form of revenue, that's a big win. And some of the sites I've worked on, there's been literally hundreds of chargers, and there's been bin lorries charging up at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and there's been vehicles charging up at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and that's because that's what time they're returned. And there's no need for that. You could actually have energy flowing from one vehicle to another, and maybe the bin lorries do need to start at 4 o'clock. So why don't we take the power out of the smaller panel vans, put it in the bin lorries, and charge the panel vans up later on at night? And these are all the things that you can do with V2X. Vehicle, that is almost an example of vehicle to vehicle. We're going to take some power out of one and put it into another because its purpose is more important, which incidentally, I believe I started that in 1993 when I realized I could siphon petrol out of my dad's Metro in order to make my Mini go further at much lower cost. And he never actually picked up on that. So, yeah, vehicle to vehicle has been going on for quite some time.
Brilliant. And Steve, I can say from literal today's example, I rode my electric motorbike this morning and I pulled it back in and plugged it in. And actually, my Nissan Leaf is what charged the motorbike back up again. So one of the vehicles filled up the other one, which is kind of fun. The only downside is I've got a Tesla as well, and that's got a bigger battery than Nissan Leaf. So I still haven't quite worked out how to not do that yet, because one completely drains the other one. but it just shows the movement of energy around, doesn't it, in different places, and how effective that can be.
These are the games that we've been playing in all of these innovation projects. First of all, it's been how do you do it? And then the next question, once you can do it, is what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And really, you can only find that out by getting users involved, and that goes down to depot managers, fleet managers, but it also comes down to the person who returns the vehicle and plugs it in. If they don't plug it in, it's of no value. We've got to keep cars plugged in if we're going to flex them and use them for the opportunity that we have before us. V2G isn't easy as well. I'd say today we're coming to the end of technology being the barrier. We've probably had a bit of a barrier. We're almost in the valley of standardized death at the moment. You've had CHAdeMO, which was there, and it did everything, but then we've chosen not to adopt CHAdeMO and move to CCS, and CCS is not quite there. And then you've got the AC versus DC argument, which will happen until we're all grey and gone. But the standards aren't there. We've got OEMs competing for who should be allowed to perform the bidirectionality. the grid constraints and connections will solve themselves. The DNOs know what they're doing, and they'll support all of that. I kind of think the other thing we need to stop thinking is you don't need 100% V2G adoption for this all to work. Just get started with some, maybe even just 5% of your fleet, maybe even 1% of your fleet. Get learning and get involved in some of the projects to see what your vehicles do, because you're never going to know if you just sit waiting until the hardware comes along. No one's going to tick the box for you, because the other thing is kind of a sort of a sometimes a horrible thing to say is to remind people V2G is not a charger feature, it's a whole system. The
Yes.
charge point management system's got to be able to cover it. It's got to be linked into what your needs are in terms of the vehicle. It's got to be linked into what's going on with the grid. And
Yeah.
we all hear about reliability these days, and to be frank, if you can't manage charging, then you're not going to monetize flexibility. There's bedrock things that we need to make sure, and then and only then are you going to be able to really get the benefits out of them. So
Yeah.
Steve, I wonder if I might just pick up a quick question from Rory McDonald Walker, who says warranty is the big issue for OEMs when it comes to V2G. Is that a fact?
I think it's a perceived fact. I don't know whether how to rephrase that, but I've been to Nissan in Japan. I've sat down. I've talked warranty with them. I've talked warranty with the team at Wallbox Quasar. There is huge amounts of work that has gone into analysis of warranty of the battery. And to be really, really blunt, when you put your foot down and you floor the car to demo to your mates how amazing it performs, you are putting far more strain on that battery than any vehicle to grid charger is ever going to do. And that's because when you put your foot down, there's 200 kilowatts being sucked out in like 10 seconds. And a vehicle to grid charger is going to be drawing anywhere between 600 watts and 7 kilowatts. It's nothing. Now that doesn't mean that it's just a free for all and you can do whatever you need. They do. You need to act as supplier partners with the OEMs when you're a hardware developer. You need to understand what they need you to do. You need to have an evidence stack, but that's all part of the automotive industry. It's been going on for years. So,
And I guess some OEMs are further down the tracks of V2G, V2L, V2X, and so on than others. And so some are playing catch up.
I think so. I used to think that V2L had turned up almost as a sort of a stopgap solution, but to be honest, I love V2L today, and the reason is because there's loads of it. Renault are putting it on their vehicles, Nissan, everybody's putting it on their vehicles. So I've always been a great or what I love is using what's available out there. We've also had like periods of time where all the V2X projects have explored specialist vehicles modified specifically for the project. That's not going to get you anywhere because there's never going to be any numbers of them. So we have to go with where the volume is to really make a difference. And for me at the moment, V2L is a massive, massive opportunity.
Certainly is, my friend. Steve, it's been brilliant to hear from you. Thank you so much. If you could hang around, we'll doubtless have questions for you after we've heard from our next guest. So bless you. Thank you for that. And we'll see you in a minute.
Cheers.
Cheers. Right, next up, Sam. We seem to have lost Sarah, which is a bit sad. We'll see if we can get her back. Oh, here she is, as if by magic. Soon as Nick Southworth turns up, she's back in the house.
Oh, Nick, yes.
Sam, introduction for Nick, please.
Yes, I can only assume that Sarah was clowning about.
Oh, the keen-eyed amongst you will have spotted that I've already said clowning for the people playing along with the bingo.
Oh, now I'm going to go all red, look like a lobster.
Oh,
anyway.
But nobody said arbitrage, so we're good. Oh.
I'm conscious that we're 38 minutes in and we don't start getting some of these names out. It's never going to happen. Anyway, right. Sorry, Nick. This is as per usual. We're larking about. Right. Nick is the Chief Technology Director at Fuse. Nick leads on all things related to technology, product, and network services. He oversees technical strategy and operations across engineering, product development, and network infrastructure. And there's a question, by the way, in the Q&A, Nick, that leads into this next sentence. His remit spans platform reliability, commercial partnerships, AI, and the delivery of charging solutions at scale. Whilst he has only been in the EV industry for the last 2 to 3 years, he has spent around 8 years building car parking yield management technology, which has a number of really significant overlaps in the EV software stack. Fun fact, Nick is a keen cyclist outside of work and is currently training for a triathlon in the summer. So you are the fittest man in the room. Actually, no, Sarah's probably, well, whatever. You're obviously very fit.
So what you did there.
Yeah, and then I realised I'm going to get, stop, Sam, stop talking. Anyway, Nick, very welcome to our show. Thank you for being on with us. And yeah, what would you like to share with us based on what you've heard already and what you think needs to be added to the debate?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for the invite to contribute. It's a pleasure. I'll be brief because I know that we're over time. We're going to get to the Q&A. But hi everyone, I'm Nick Southworth. I'm the CTO at Fuse. As you've already been told in the intro, I'm pretty new to the EV industry. Certainly compared to the likes of Steve, who Steve and I know each other pretty well at this point. But I can't profess to having the same level of experience in terms of years, but I'm working very hard to ensure that I'm certainly up to date with the latest and greatest. So anyway, onto Fuse. So I'm sure some of you are already familiar with what Fuse is and what we do. For those that aren't, Fuse is a UK-based charge point management system, CPMS. We are the platform that sits behind EV charging networks. We're essentially the brains that manages everything from individual charge points right through to entire multi-site fleet operations. Beyond just software, we're also increasingly providing services to those businesses that are required to manage that charge point infrastructure. So easy example in the public space, as you'll most likely know, there's regulations in place that mandate public charge point operators must have 24/7 toll-free driver support and must offer integration with roaming partners, etc. So we provide and manage all of that service to those customers. And equally the same can be said, slightly more diverse in the private and fleet sectors. My role spans product and technology and also the delivery of our network services, including things like proactive charger monitoring and management, which starts to lead us into conversations, I'm sure, around AI and all that sort of stuff. Very interested to have that conversation. Fuse serves multiple sectors across the landscape. So we offer services for workplaces, for public, for depots, be they logistics, delivery, final mile, basically anybody running commercial vehicles. We have solutions for destination and public charging. And I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with a lot of the public charge point networks that we work with. So our platform manages the entire stack, from communication with chargers to managing payments and reconciliation and all of the stuff that people often don't think about when they think about EV charging. We provide that entire kind of turnkey solution as a B2B capability. And actually we're pretty scaled now. We're dealing with some pretty big enterprise clients. We've got tens of thousands of EVSEs connectors on the platform. And I think at last count, a session begins on the platform every 3 or 4 seconds in one form or another. So it's a pretty scaled platform as of today. In terms of the stuff we're talking about today, we've had some really interesting projects in this space. So Fuse was born out of innovation and sort of initially grant funded projects. And so 2 or 3 of the projects we've worked on, for instance, managing solar, so powering vehicles through solar panels that are still actually in place in Lancaster, through to actually a project we work with Steve and his team on, providing rural resilience. So that's enabling shared services, town halls, to be powered by a vehicle in times of need when the grid is in pressure or there's been an issue that's preventing power getting to homes. So really important proof of concepts there. And then equally around a project with some bin trucks down in the southeast, where we were able to demonstrate technically the capability of discharging that power back into the grid through flex partners to generate revenue. And we ultimately pulled together a really interesting summary of the business case around all of that, which broadly tells us what I think we all know, which is this stuff isn't quite there, but is definitely something that's coming very, very quickly. And that's really what's quite interesting for us in the future, because Fuses today offers smart energy management capabilities like DLB and static load balancing as standard. But as we move forward, we absolutely see a world where fleets and depots require much more capability, much more smart and intelligent management of energy across the things we've been talking about today, and full grid integration, ultimately management of a number of different energy assets in that fleets and depot environment. So Fuse is looking to that space over the next year or two and ensuring that we continue to have the kind of full fleet solution, including energy management and grid integration.
God, Nick.
So I think that broadly explains what we're doing.
Yeah, Fuse are absolutely killing it. We were delighted to welcome you along to the Partners Day at Openreach. We had the Fuse team with us. And yeah, the acronym police, which is also Paul Kirby, who is not here, would be on you if I don't revisit a couple of the acronyms that you just did.
Apologies.
So DLB, I believe to be demand load balancing, and EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. And yeah, do you have those exact figures of how many? Because it's absolutely tons. You've been pioneering this space for so long.
In terms of connectors?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be able to share the exact number, but it's into the tens of thousands. And actually, this first quarter of this year is probably our single biggest growth quarter, and it looks to continue to grow beyond. So the team are incredibly busy, getting better and better at onboarding existing networks. Because the interesting thing that we've obviously been going through over the last year or two is where it was predominantly new chargers in the ground coming to us because the CPMS was needed. We're actually spending much more of our time now migrating existing networks as there are shifts in the market. You've seen yourselves, lots of consolidation, some market failure. And so Fuse is becoming the sort of de facto solution for a lot of those networks looking for a new home.
Nick, do you have any sense of how long the transition to be able to move energy bidirectionally might take? In your planning, you must have some assumptions about it being a 2-year or 5-year or 10-year journey for mainstream adoption. What are you thinking?
Well, I think we don't cater to domestic use cases other than fleet reimbursement scenarios, but that I think there's some pretty obvious use cases, and Sam demonstrated some really, really exciting capability there that I'm personally keen to replicate. In the fleet and depot space, I think that there is more complexity, but ultimately the market forces are, they're driving us only in one direction. I think it's definitely in the shorter term, certainly not 5 or 10 years. The work that we're doing to enable some of these use cases is really reasonably imminent. So this year, the challenge, of course, is, well, there are many challenges, but some of the things we've heard about today, and this is, I don't know if this has been said, but it's on the bingo card, but there's a real challenge around interoperability, the standards needed to ensure that vehicles, charging infrastructure, DNOs and energy providers, flexibility providers can all talk a common language, and we can all work together in a way that that makes this stuff as frictionless as possible. In the EU, of course, as of next year, we've got a mandate around -20, which is a really big step forward, and I suspect the UK will be a fast follow in the adoption of that standard. But until we see what OEMs are doing and see some consistency in their standards, it's difficult to really project exactly when this is going to be fully mainstream. But I certainly wouldn't expect it to go beyond 2 years.
Okay, cool. Shall we get Jamie and Steve into the house again?
Oh, yes.
And let's get them back. Jamie's here and Steve's back. Now, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce to you the Woman of the Year 2 years ago. See what I did there? Yeah. Sarah Sloman, who's going to take us through the Q&A box. Sarah, it's all yours. What questions have we got?
The pleasure is indeed all mine. And those of you who can see the Q&A box, there's one that I can't read out until at least the last minute. So we'll just go straight in with a couple. I think it's worth just picking up on some of the comments in the chat, because you're all very naughty and you often do ask each other questions in the chat, and I have to go through and find them. There was a really good one in here that I appreciated about, this is from Lee Dalton. Is V2X really likely to be more detrimental to an EV battery than users than just charging when they need to, rather than following manufacturers' guidance? Essentially, as a user, it feels like OEMs are worrying for no reason. What would you like to comment on, guests, on that thought? Is it a worry of discharging, recharging, discharging, recharging, ruining the OEM battery?
Can I jump on that one first?
Love you too. Thank you, Steve.
So it is legitimate, because their whole life revolves around warranty. They sell you a car, and then you have expectations of the lifetime of that vehicle, and you take those expectations back to them. You don't go to Esso and say the fuel that you put in my car wasn't great. If your car is coming to the end of its usability, it's the car, it's the Ford. You take it back to them. So absolutely they're warranted, and absolutely they have a stake in the game and should be providing a lot of input to kind of keep us. Some of us would love to pull 1 megawatt out of a Nissan Leaf, but I'm pretty sure that'll wreck it. So somebody needs to put the guardrails in to control what we do.
Actually, Paul from the almighty Zaptec has confirmed that as well. For normal users, it's unlikely to be degradation, but if somebody decided to do 100% cycling all the time, then yes, that vehicle wouldn't last. So completely legit that OEMs would want to monitor that risk. Now, this next one's from Stuart Humphrey. Stuart Humphrey is also somebody that's been in the space a very long time.
We are not
We do
worthy.
love, if you haven't heard his podcast, please do log on to EV Cafe and listen to the podcast of Stuart's. But he asks a very important question. How will AI impact with balancing the grid as per Octopus Intelligent Go to control the charger and optimize the charging and discharging? Who would like to take that one?
Nick's in.
Got to be Nick, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Look, I think like all charge point operations and fundamentally all operations in all industries, AI is going to play an existential role. I think right now, what we as sort of industry pioneers in lots of ways need to do is demonstrate how these operations can, both the technical feasibility and the commercial feasibility, and figure out how all of this stuff works operationally. But ultimately, once we get to that point, the intelligence layer that wraps around all of this to decide when is the opportune moment to charge, discharge, to export to the grid, to store locally, the scheduling required for fleet management and ensuring maximum utilization and full yield management across multi-site depots, for instance, will absolutely benefit from the capability that AI brings. So I think we've got a lot of work to do first. It can't do that bit for us. But once it's fully shrink wrapped, I absolutely see AI being a key part of the way that it's delivered.
Thank you. We've still got two more in the Q&A, but my fellow hosts, John, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I got a question for Mr. Fretwell. Something's just dawned on me. It's something I don't know the answer to. V2L, when you plug your kit into your van, how do you know how much juice it's pulling? Does the vehicle give me a readout of how hungry my kit is, or have you got so much energy on board that it really doesn't matter?
It is the latter, I'm afraid, John. It's in terms of, like I said, the three plugs in the back being 3.3 kilowatt each. You would need to be, and we did this. The fridge that we had powering keeping the cool milk cooled in the CV show. The energy efficiency stickers that you normally see on the side of a fridge. It says if you have this fridge plugged in for a year, the total energy drain because of its energy efficiency rating is 100 kilowatt hours. So we have 106 kilowatt hours of battery capacity in the largest L3H3, and that's
Power of fridge for a
power of
year.
fridge for a year. So if you can imagine when you plug your phone into the USB socket and it's barely pulling a couple of milliamp hours from there. I'm mixing measurements, so I'll be shouted at for that. But effectively, you're talking about kilowatt hours for the battery capacity, kilo being the 1,000. Then we're not seeing anywhere near that in terms of to the earlier comment about megawatts. Or Sam's going to give me a slap. That's what the hand's up for. It's actually going to come across like that instead.
Never.
Not at all. Not at all. Thanks, Jamie. I had one comment and one question. The comment is thanks to Ian Thompson for his typo because
yes, I thought you'd see that. Don't read it out,
yeah,
but yes,
he's referred to Robert Llewellyn as Booby Lou, and
oh no,
that's great. So I'm screen grabbing that and texting him immediately. But my question is around battery passports. I've just been thinking, Steve, when you were talking about the degradation fear factor of potential harm that batteries might cause. Are we in a position where battery passports might be an essential part of the mix, so that the provenance of your vehicle and its battery is understood by the next person? Now, whether or not that has a material fact on residual values or not, I don't know. But is that something that we should start to consider? Because, as you said, I think it was you said earlier, like, this is no longer a vehicle on wheels. It's an energy storage that happens to move things around, but also does other. So, just wondering whether that is becoming something that might need to be a real prerequisite in the regulation going forward.
I think it is, because I think when you buy a second-hand car, you check the steering wheel and you compare how shiny the steering wheel is to the Odo. You know, has this car had 1 million miles on it with a taxi driver? So you can't see the battery, you know, and you need some. It's such a fundamental part of the vehicle. So understanding what state that battery's in uh, is really important. And maybe just a quick analogy back to my old Mini. Uh, I never knew how rusty the inside of the Mini fuel tank was until I actually had to hoik it out and replace it because somebody tail-ended me. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have known, but actually, if I'd have been driving down the motorway and that rust had got into the pipelines, then the car would have stopped, wouldn't it? So we do need indicators of what's going on inside our vehicles, but I don't think vehicle to grid is going to do anything to that. I think that's a bigger question of how is this vehicle being driven.
Well, that's the
No, but I suppose.
But-
Oh, sorry, Sas, go on.
we're very proud of Avalou, our EV Cafe sponsors, because they're taking the whole battery health check thing to a whole new level. And if you tune in to their their podcast, they've got a really audacious goal, and I absolutely am backing it, which is that every vehicle sold would have to have an in-depth battery, not just a little one, but the way they do it, so that every cell is checked, not just the battery in general. And then it doesn't really matter what you've done with your vehicle during the time. You'll resell it at the value of the battery and its health.
Sam,
Yeah,
you had a little
I was just-
something.
Well, I was just thinking, as Steve said, vehicle to grid, whilst it might not have an impact on the residual values or the degradation of the battery, the perception may well still be that it does. So even that is an education piece that we need to think about in the future, isn't it? In terms of, don't worry, that's not going to have an impact, because we've got the FUD that Sas mentioned at the beginning. Is this is another element that could put a spanner in the works unnecessarily, just for the perception of what it might do.
Maybe, I mean, just a little analogy. Do you remember when you used to leave like a classic car in the garage with like half a tank of fuel and you left it for an entire half year? You'd always be told, don't leave fuel in a tank. It's going to go off. So, maybe there's also an argument that battery vehicles left sitting with the exact same level of charge might not be great either. And actually, the charge point could be doing a lot of good by just slowly taking it out and putting it back in again.
That's
That's
wise.
for battery chemists
Wise
to figure out.
words.
Jamie?
Wise words. Go on, Sarah. You got something for Jamie?
He had his hand up, but he put it back down.
I was just going to say about the warranty question. So obviously we know that in the UK, in order to be eligible for the plug-in car grant or the plug-in van grant, you have to have a minimum warranty, which is 8 years on the high voltage battery, or in our case, 120,000 miles. But there is an argument for whether you actually warranty the battery on charging cycles, so the number of times that it gets discharged. If you put that information out in the public domain, again, as to Steve's point, you really need to be able to measure how many times it's been discharged and give the customers that reassurance, or the buyer that reassurance that it is going to be worth what you say it's worth. I think people like Avalou and battery health certificates for state of health of the battery are really important.
You're
Conspiracy, good
absolutely
point.
right.
Well made. There's one. We've got time for a couple more, I think. John, give me a nod.
Go
if
on
you're-
then.
Yeah. Okay. Mohsin Hassan, absolutely brilliant question. This is something that I was saying to Sam about before he put his presentation together. That it's the V2G chargers are expensive and certainly were expensive, but they're a fraction of the price now. So the question is, any option to innovate new technology to make it more affordable at a fraction of the cost? I think the answer is scale.
Seems sensible. She's good. Question and answer from one human being. Woman of the year, everybody. Sarah Sloman.
Are we going to humour Ian Thompson with his quite hilarious ruins the bingo game question?
Yes,
on.
sounds great.
Okay. Please be upstanding for the middle column question. So I've switched energy providers to, something ocean related. Shark, lobster, no, octopus. Yes, that's it, octopus. Now they offer all sorts of electrification hardware deals. They've even offered an initial quote for solar PV. Inverter, 5 kilowatt hour battery, expandable for about 9 large. Problem is, these deals often have a limited choice of kit. For example, they offer an OMI wall box for home charging, but I've always preferred a Zappi since they seem more future-proof and adaptable to whatever. or a lithium-ion battery, but the newer nylon ones from 11 Energy seem a better fit for buildings. The question is, future in expansion and interoperability. Everyone from the loneliest commentator to the woman of the year herself, you know who, seems to have a different opinion. What would be the panel's ideal home setup? It would be sending you a mug, Ian, because to be honest, that was super cheeky, super top of the show, and super fun, like we try to make all of our EV Cafe webinars. So mug winging its way to you.
Well done, Sarah. And the clock's beaten us. Once again, we'd like to really, really thank our guests. Even Sam was good. But Jamie,
Especially
Steve, and Nick, you were outstanding. Thank you so, so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And like great charging, the EV Cafe is a two-way deal. It's not just about the talking heads, it's about the people who come along and listen. We can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been great to see your comments, and I hope you've enjoyed the few that we've thrown in. Until next time, the 15th of April at 12 noon, we'll see you then, where we're going to talk about sharing, because it's caring, you know. So sharing assets, sharing charging, sharing vehicles, all that sharing stuff. We'll see you soon. But until then, bring on the dancing lobsters. We're out of here.
Thank you, JC, host with the most.